All right, so 1,534 days ago, I started game development for the first time. I opened up Unity and I started making our very first city builder automation game that took 18 months to make. And finally now, after having professionally pursued game development for nearly 3 years, I would say, we're reaching the point, this is the mandatory, I need to show you these numbers. Yes, this may look like an asshole thing to do, but otherwise you're not going to listen to me. We're making around 350 bucks a day, 10K a month, as the gurus would say. So I'm starting to feel like, you know, we're getting profitable finally. We have paid off all of the sweat equity. We are, any money we make right now goes 100% to the company, 100% to me, and then the rest of the team. That was a long time. 1,534 days is honestly not ideal. I'm gonna be honest with you. It was a long time of me not making any money, just throwing money in the pit, I'm gonna be honest, and just hoping that at some point, if I keep going long enough, it's going to pay off. And in my case, I would like to say that I am fortunate enough that it did pay off. But there are some things, you know, if I had to go back and start making games from zero again, that I would probably do different, or especially start making games like a financial aspect of like being like, okay, I want to make a game dev studio, but I don't want to wait 4 years to make it profitable, because even more than 4 years, kind of miserable, right? First lesson is something I think you need to understand, and was something that we didn't fully understand, and we kind of tried a bunch of distractions with that, is that game dev is a very binary way of earning money. What does that mean? You know, you have these industries, not game dev related, where it's kind of like you can get started with making money very simple. A stupid example, but like dropshipping is something that technically, if you start dropshipping, I'm not saying you should, if everything goes well, you can make money by the end of the day, or day trading, or I don't know. I'm just coming up with random shit. Even stuff like pottery, it's like if you start pottery, you get your clay, you get your throwing wheel, and if you have solid marketing or whatever, the time to earning money can be a week, less than a week even. Like even if you're starting from bare minimum, you can kind of find someone probably who would buy your mug. That same thing doesn't apply to game development. I think game development is one of the worst possible, especially considering it's a digital product still, so you don't need to deal with like international logistics really. The time between getting an idea and being able to monetize that idea is often multiple years. And that's, because it was 18 months for us basically. That first game between the coming up with the idea and releasing that game and starting to make money from that was 18 months. And now, of course, we've gotten better at it. And we understand that, hey, this is actually kind of a dumb thing. So we can make games faster, but still you're looking at multiple months, honestly, if you want to make a commercial game. And until the commercial game is out, realistically, you're not going to be making any money. Yes, probably somebody's screaming right now of like, oh yeah, but what about Kickstarter, or I can sell pre-orders or all of that. We've done that. We've sold pre-order copies for our game and things like that. And yes, we sold some, but the end result was actually worse than if we hadn't sold them. There's another deep dive story in there. Just assume that if you want to make games, don't worry about like, if you need to be profitable before the game is actually out, try a different approach. Or like, don't focus on making games right now as your primary funding. You need to have some time that you can be okay with. I'm not going to make any money for the next half year, 1 year, however long, because I know that I need to get to that binary point of going from $0 to, okay, I have my release and I'm making money now. We got distracted by things like, oh, we'll do work for hire. We'll start making our own assets in the meantime to kind of make money. We also did other stuff like this YouTube channel. We ran a Patreon. All of those things, looking back, I think they just slowed us down more to a certain degree. And I think also, you know, we also did YouTube and things like that for the love of the game. For the first 8 months, there was zero monetization. Patreon only started after like 20 months of doing game development. It takes a long time to get monetized, and there's not that much money in like right now, like doing like work for hire or making assets or whatever. If you want to make money from assets, you go in with the ad front approach of, I'm a good artist, or I can write good code assets, although I think that's an all other can of worms. And that is going to be my main source of revenue. I'm not going to focus and get distracted by the games. I think that is kind of my first thing. So be aware of that and keep the primary goal of your studio not to be profitable at the start, but to release games. Release games first. Profitability will come later, but the sooner you can teach yourself to make games in smaller scopes in shorter development cycles means that it's going to be easier for you to actually start monetizing and like getting some revenue from your studio, even if it's just 200, 300 bucks a month for your first game. That was the case in Forge Industry, our first game. Over time, if you release more, it's going to compound. Trust the system, have enough of a financial buffer that you can keep going at it long enough. And all of those distractions, they will massively increase how much time you're going to need to release more games to kind of get free from having to do work for hire. Because for a lot of people, work for hire or making assets isn't the final goal. It's just the, oh, what if we try to sell like educational games to big companies or something to give us money in the meantime? Once again, we tried that shit. It's going to burn a lot of time and energy that honestly is not gonna give a good return on investment. If you want to make games, just make games and focus on only making games. So speaking of making games, this is another one. This might seem hypocritical because it's me saying this, and for context, our studio started with 4 people, we're 3 people now. I would say for most people, your first game is probably best off solo developed. Especially whether it's the first commercial game or like the first game that you're kind of more serious and it's not just like some chitty 1-week game jam thing. Yes, working with people in a team on games is much nicer from a emotional standpoint, from a you can split the load standpoint, from a different people have different skill standpoint. I get all of those, but you don't know yet if you like to make games. You don't know yet if you can make games. And there's this almost forced self-discovery that I would say, where you do need to make a game at some point by yourself to want to understand who am I, what do I like, what do I not like. And also, especially in the beginning, there are no good teammates. This might sound like weird. I think I am incredibly lucky and bless myself every day for the team that I had. But we already knew each other coming in from like, I think we had like 4 years of prior, or 3 or 4 years that we knew each other. One of the team members I knew for 12 years already. We could work together pretty easy. But you see this often as well. Like people are like, hey, I want to start a studio. They're in our Patreon or something. I want to make a game. I want to find an artist or I want to find a programmer to make the game with me. As you see this, especially both of them are still brand new developers. So neither of them really even know, can I see this project to completion? Can I do what it takes to make games? And for a lot of people, maybe they don't want to make games. That's also what we realized. That's why we're with 3 people now. You're also then adding an extra mental load, I would say, because yeah, sure, you can like talk to someone, but also, especially if it's your first games, you're not doing this full time most of the time. So suddenly life gets in the way and you can't work for 2 months. And then you're not just dragging, like you're not stopping your own development, but you're also stopping the other person's development. And that's if something happens on your end, there's a big chance there's going to happen something on their end. Basically, every group project game development thing or like revenue share studio ends in failure, unfortunately. I don't know, this might sound doomerism, but that is just from what I've seen and talked to hundreds, I think at this point even thousands of game developers through like this YouTube channel. This happens almost always. Starting by making a game by yourself to prove to the world that, hey, I can make a game by myself, also gives you better opportunities or like kind of a better like debating position if you then want to later on find someone to team up with, because you are no longer going to be the idea guy. You're not going to be like the guy who's like, oh, I came up with this game idea. Can I get an artist and a programmer and we'll split it 3 ways or something and I'll do the game design and the game idea? No, you've shown to the world, hey, I can actually make a game from commercial perspective. And it raises the bar of people wanting to work with you, and you can be more selective of, hey, who do I want to work with? And if you find someone else who is also moderately competent, then I think working together can work really well. But if you're not both moderately competent at the start, I think every single project is basically doomed to fail and become a horror nightmare that makes you want to regret doing game dev in the first place. The next thing, and this is once again focused kind of if you want to go for profitability, is that whilst there's no magic formula, there definitely are metas to Steam. You know, if you look at 10 different YouTube podcasts where they're like asking like these people who've made $1 million games and you ask them like, oh, what's the secret to making a successful game on Steam? You will get 10 different answers. But there is a underlying meta for the most part that like certain genres do better, certain art styles do better. And whilst there is kind of like the meta of, you know, certain genres like open world survival crafting or automation games perform better than 2D platformers, there's always going to be 2D platformers that perform really well or open world survival crafting games that perform really bad. Like there is no guarantee purely from genre of what game is going to be successful or not. What I think is more important, and that is what I think you should understand if you're like beginning as a developer, is that the meta to having a successful game on Steam is to make a good game. And this may sound dumb, but I think this is the biggest problem that I see our audience have. Being able to objectively look at their game and be like, is this actually a good game? Is this a game that genuinely people would pay money for in the genre? And what is like kind of, if you have to self-grade your game, let's say like a Hollow Knight or a Celeste is a 10 out of 10, how close am I there? Because yes, a 2D pixel art platformer, honest to God, can still perform pretty okay to well on Steam, but you need to have an objective 9.5 out of 10. And a lot of developers, they think they have a 9.5 out of 10 game, when in reality they have a 4 out of 10 pixel platformer. And that is something that people don't want. And depending on the genre, the kind of like minimum barrier of entry goes up or down. Like if you make an automation game and it's like a 7 out of 10, you're going to probably be performing better already than a 9 out of 10 pixel art platform, because that's kind of how those genres work. But I think that is the thing. A lot of our viewers' games, so maybe yours as well, whilst they have good ideas and they have genres that work on paper, they may genuinely just not be good enough. Once again, this was a problem that we had and we lacked the experience of when we first made Forge Industry, where we had this game and we were so in the sauce that we couldn't objectively say, yeah, actually this game isn't really that good. Why are we working on this? Or like, we can make this game better. Like now, in hindsight, looking at Forge Industry, it's like, of course this game bombed on launch. It's a surprise that game even made $10,000, honestly. But back then for us, we didn't understand it yet. And I think that is kind of the big risk that I see developers have, is not see, is this game good or not? It's something that I'm getting better at now, I would say, where, you know, sometimes you look at a game and you look at one screenshot and you can almost tell like, yeah, this game is going to be a success. You haven't even seen anything else, but that is kind of a feeling and a level of experience that you only get by not just making games yourself, but also for a long time. It's something that I really enjoy doing. I think is a very good habit to have. Just look at Steam. Every day, take a look at Steam. What are like the games that are getting daily deals? What are the games that are in popular upcoming? Taking a look at those and getting a better idea of what are the games that are actually performing well on Steam. You're not going to learn the secret in one day, but by doing this for a year, just as like your little daily habit, you're going to get a much better compass to figure out, hey, does this actually fit in the greater Steam ecosystem, or is this just hot slop that I shouldn't be publishing or I shouldn't be expecting people to pay money for? Now, a quick plug, if you do have a prototype and you're not really certain, like, hey, is this something that honestly the market really wants? Because you're fearing that you're stuck in that loop as well of, I think my game is good, but then not having enough external validation. There's a link down below if you want me to play your game, give you feedback and decide, hey, is this a game that you should just kill? Is there a way we can pivot? Or is this actually the next hot shit? And how do we release this as good as possible? There's a link down below explaining the entire process. I think it can help you. I've helped a bunch of developers with it as well. So I just wanted to mention that. And then I think the final thing that I want to say, like, you know, I can make like 17 versions of this, but I tried to keep it somewhat condensed. A lot of our audience are programmers. So this one goes out to you guys, because we are programmers as well. Figuring out reusable code and frameworks is the biggest trap you can have. It's something that even our cracked developers, I think our developers, we have 2 developers on our team, are really genuinely good at game development at this point. They've been doing it for, like, one of them has been doing it for 15 years. The other guy has been doing it professionally for almost 5 years as well. And when we started making our games, we're like, oh, we're going to make this hyper generic and we're going to make this reusable. And our settings menu is going to be a separate package that we can easily export between our different games. And now we're just like, no, we don't do reusability. We just make it what we need. I don't know if it's probably not Occam's razor, but I feel like there is a razor, it's Bite Me's razor, I don't know, of it really doesn't need to be generic for the most part. You needing to make generics and being so worried about like, oh, but I can reuse this combat system or this movement system in my next game. It's just such a rookie mistake, unfortunately, where now the more and more, like we used to have, don't get me wrong, these like centralized packages, we called them like Swiss code, and it was like 13 different libraries for how we did audio, how we did all of those things. Now we just don't care with those things anymore. We're just like, nope, we start from zero, or like not start from zero. We can still look at like, hey, what did we do other times? Like we have a bunch of like generic scripts for like game field that we just copy. But for the most part, a lot of stuff, when you write it, also isn't going to be good enough. Or like, you know, you write your first person controller, but you don't keep in mind certain expandability features. And maybe if you do make a game that is in that same style, another first person game is your second one, then you could be like, oh, I can reuse this. And then in game 1, you're already worrying about like, oh, I'm going to make this very extensible. Or in game 2, you can just be like, hey, these were the problems that I had with the first version. Let me just write a new version from scratch because you have an empty project anyways. Let me make it better based on what I learned in the previous game. That's what we're doing now as well. We have like a bunch of games now that are very focused on like window management, for lack of a better word. We made a bunch of mistakes with like the first game. It wasn't like, you know, literally unplayable, but we also never felt like, hey, let's make this a package or reusable or something. No, for the second game, we just looked at, okay, what did we do good? What did we do bad? And we just wrote a new version because the cost of writing it again is honestly less than the cost of trying to engineer it from the start when you don't even know what the requirements are yet, in a way that you can reuse it in the future. And this is even letting alone the fact that most developers I know, they don't stick to one genre. We don't do that. We go from management game to first-person game to, once again, UI-heavy game, and the next game is going to be different again. You want to, once again, going back to that first point, it's a binary state. The longer you spend writing generic code for your first game, the longer you're going to have to wait until reaching profitability. And the question is, do you rather have a kick-ass asset that you spent 3 weeks on working on, or you could have bought on the Unity Asset Store, or would you rather have released your game a month earlier and also has less complexity most of the time because you are not dealing with like all of the generic use cases and all of that? This kind of turned into a programming rant. That wasn't really the goal, but it is something that frustrates me to no end with like especially developers, like software developers who go into game development and who are also like similar things. They're so fucking cheap and they're like, oh, I'm a programmer, I can do everything. And they're like, I'm going to write my own localization system. And it's like, yeah, sure, buddy. You know, Unity has it for free built-in. Godot has it for free built-in. They're like, no, mine is going to be more like, I don't know, extensive. It's like, how the hell are you going to do that? And then they spend a month on localization, or they're just like, fuck it, we don't localize because it's just too much pain. These systems, there are so many systems on like asset stores or on GitHub or for free even, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I know it's cute to say like, are you even a programmer if you haven't reinvented the wheel? But once again, to be honest, you know, the point of this video is let's talk about at some point releasing our games and being profitable. If you want to be an engine developer, that's fine by me. But most of the people watching this, I'm assuming, want to be game developers. So focus on making the fucking game and not on making the systems that are supporting the game, basically. Just make the game. The game needs to be fun. It doesn't matter how the code is structured. That's my little rant over. I think those were some of the big things already that I would say. Maybe one final dumb thing, but it kind of ties into the profitability part earlier. Don't get distracted also, not just by like making money. This is maybe a hot take. I was like, what are my main hot takes? Because I also have a lot of cold takes, but I'm leaving them out of this video. Don't get distracted by networking events and feeling like, oh, I need to go to Gamescom to go and pitch. I need to go to these local game dev community meetups. If your goal is profitability, they don't matter. If your goal is, hey, I want to meet people and see what they're doing, you can do it. Maybe this is just the Belgian landscape. That's where I'm from. Originally, we went to some of the game dev events. The problem, once again, it's kind of like if you've never released a game before, you don't get invited to the cool people game dev events. You only get invited to like the student game dev events or the developers who haven't really achieved much. So you're kind of in this loser group almost of events where, yeah, sure, you can talk to these other people, but none of them have released a game. And none of them have any fucking clue what they're doing. And once again, once you release a game, doors will open. Discord servers will open. Whatever will open for you, you can network better. You can reach out way more once you've proven, hey, I can make a game. You're going to be in a group with other people who have made a game. And this is 100 times more valuable than being in a group or like knowing some other game developers, but all they do is they've used Godot a few times for like some game jams and that's it. Sure, it's cool, but the value you get out of it isn't really there. And I don't know. Yeah. If you want to go, don't let me stop you. Maybe I just sound like a miserable person to be with, but I went to a lot of these events. And for the most part, they also like events, also like showcasing your game there and doing like playtesting sessions. There are more efficient ways than doing those game developer only playtesting sessions, because that's the other problem. If you're in a group of like 10 other game developers and they're all playtesting your game, they all just want to make the game in their vision. They're not giving you good playtester feedback. Because us game developers, half the game developers don't even play games because they're too busy working on their own games. So why are you suddenly going to have to take their game dev advice? They're good if you're stuck on like, hey, I have this technical problem, but for like an actual, like, is this game fun problem? I honestly wouldn't put too much value on that because they're not going to buy your game most of the time. Anyway, find your audience through different platforms, put them on itch.io, Reddit, anything else where your actual audience is. Game developers, less helpful. Now, if you do want a cool community, once again, our Discord is going to be linked down below as well, where there are still a bunch of cool people, but especially like physical events, don't bother with them for the most part, I would say. If they're very local to where you are, sure. But if anything else, I wouldn't really suggest it. So anyways, that's what I really wanted to say. I was like doing some finance stuff recently. I'm like, hey, we actually made profit. And that's kind of what prompted me to make this video. So I hope you learned something new. There were definitely some hot takes. Please don't hate me in the comments. At the end of the day, it's kind of like, you know, there's all these ways to make successful games. Maybe there's a guy who only went to these networking events and found a team that way and made a successful game that way. Cool for you. This is generally what I see the best advice that I can give you. So we're on the road now, not just to make a profitable studio, but to build $1 million studio. And if that's something that you want to see, then be sure to head down below and subscribe because we upload 2 videos every week. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming out on this channel in the next few weeks. So see you guys in the next one. Bye.